May I move the mic up? May I move the mic up?
Yes, you can.
Am I moving the right thing?
Q, we're going, man. Q, yeah, we're going. Sharp one.
Were you the one that said that this thing doesn't matter, which I don't believe?
What?
That this thing needs to be moved that way.
Because the weight isn't the best.
My science knowledge doesn't agree with that. Buga, buga, buga. Ubonile? My science knowledge doesn't agree.
What do you want to move? You want to move this way?
So it balances.
I grant. We don't want to see most of the stand in the frame. We want to see less of it.
But you wouldn't if this moves back, right? Never mind.
This then would have to come here.
No one makes
So this is reaching out. So it's
No, I'm saying if this moves back
then
to balance.
there's a stand would have to almost be
One of
there.
these.
No, but it's. I hear you. No worries. I'll take your word for it. Khomozo, since you're the stylist on camera, take off
Yeah?
my top.
No, it's cool.
You said breasts, something about breasts and club. Not today.
No, not today. That's
Oh, just for women. We are bandlulula, baba.
I don't understand why you want to get up naked on this, man.
Why what?
I understand when this.
You don't understand what?
I don't understand why you want to take off. I take the clothing on this.
I want to take chains off. I want to be like 50 Cent and Tupac, baba. I want to get to that Tupac level where you just start like that.
A grind, ne?
Yeah.
So do I need to come closer or only I can sit like this?
It's like that.
Okay.
I know where 50 Cent ended up. He was also topless.
Yeah, you guys can take it away when you're ready.
Okay. I hate the fact that I have notes, but I'll give a disclaimer on camera because it's important for me. My life. Are you happy with the sound?
Yeah.
It feels so professional. I feel so on. Are you happy with the lighting?
Yeah.
You feel like it's darker?
No? Okay. Molo Vuyo njani?
Dapelo njani?
No, I'm very well, thanks. I apologize for the formal introduction, but I'm learning that depending on the guests, you have to kind of change your approach and not start with rubbish and nonsense because the matters of national interest need to be considered. But I do need to give a disclaimer. I think for your benefit and the benefit of the crew I work with and the benefit of the audience, I'm currently stuck in my head wondering about the dangers of inviting political leaders to this platform.
Yeah.
Because I didn't set up this platform for political, I'll call it campaigning, so to speak. Because a lot of politicians, when they go on platforms, the main thing for them is to campaign, which I understand. If I was inviting the founders of Trip and Ipatu, they want to come here and speak about their businesses.
Yeah.
If I invite someone who runs a charity organization, so it wouldn't be fair for me to invite you and you're known as a leader of ATM and then be like, nah, I don't want you to speak politics. Let's speak something else. But I worry about it because I don't want to get into the trap of being a political campaigning space, number one. And number two, copying mainstream media.
Yeah.
Because mainstream media, I think it invites you guys to hear your thoughts, asks you certain questions. I prefer conversation.
Yeah.
I'd like to get to know you as a person, ask personal questions that I'd like answered, and maybe some questions that other people would like to have answered. So I just want to apologize that I'm still kind of stuck between those two spaces. I never used to have questions, but now when people like yourself come through, I do some research and I prepare some questions for the benefit of the audience, more than the benefit of myself. But more than that, Mr. Zungula, how are you doing?
I'm good.
How's your tea? I know load shedding, our tea is not as hot as it could be.
It's better than nothing.
Okay, I apologize.
At least the water is not that cold.
Nah.
Yeah.
I apologize. I unfortunately don't run this country, so I can't take blame for why we can't boil water, but I hope the tea will be okay.
Yeah.
For people that have never heard of you, ever.
Mm.
Vuyo lwethu, who are you? Where are you from? Who are you? Where are you from? Maybe where did you study? And then there's a very important question after that I'd like us to start on.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was born in Mthatha in 1987. Grew up between Egcuwa and Mthatha.
Egcuwa is Butterworth.
Butterworth, yeah.
Yeah.
Grew up with my grandparents at Egcuwa. Then 2006, I went to NMMU, which is in PE.
Yeah.
I did my BCom there.
Okay.
Then 2010, I moved for the first time to Pretoria, which is a Centurion.
Yeah.
So that's where I've been up until 2019, where
Sure.
I need now to alternate between Cape Town and Pretoria.
Okay.
So that is me in a nutshell when it comes to where I was born and where did I study.
There's an amazing gentleman. I think he might also be based in Centurion. I'm not sure. Uveli Mpele.
Yeah.
Passionate Pan-Africanist, very pro-black. And what I've seen with the Centurion is a lot of Amaponu are now turning Centurion into like their new Pretoria. A lot of white Afrikaans businesses are moving there.
Yeah.
You don't feel that type of energy when you're that side?
No, fortunately, for me, when I moved to Pretoria, 2010, but the first company I worked for was an Afrikaans accounting firm.
Okay.
So I got to understand them. I got to experience, what a lot of people experience in our country when it comes to working in a white space, white Afrikaner-dominated space. So, but for me, my experience of Centurion has been, it's okay. Because I'm there to work. I'm not intending on settling down in Centurion.
Okay.
Because I don't like waking up early in the morning. So for me, I like the convenience of wanting to drive or at least for about 5 minutes to get to work.
Yeah.
This thing of staying at Joburg, working at Pretoria, or vice versa,
Sure.
should never work for me.
I understand. And I don't know how people do it.
Yeah.
You live a honeydew in the West Rand. I know a lot of white Afrikaans people love Kreersdorp.
Yeah.
And they travel on the N14 to Pretoria every day. I think you probably lose like 4 hours a day in traffic, which every 6 days, if my maths is correct, means you lose a full day in traffic. That's not life.
Yeah.
Very important question for me and for everyone is, why did you get into politics?
I got into politics in 2018. 2018, there was a council of churches which was formed by mostly indigenous churches. As you will know, in our country, you are going to have your mainline churches, your Anglicans, your Methodist churches. They are forming the ACCC predominantly. Then you are going to have your indigenous churches, Amazayoni, Abapostile. Those ones aren't recognized or aren't part of the ACCC. So
please, can you slow down? Sorry, the ACCC.
Yeah, South African Council of Churches.
Okay.
I think it's led by Bishop Mpumlwana.
Okay.
So when you hear ACCC, that's their churches, which are predominantly mainline churches that are, I could say, they have the influence of Methodists or Anglicans, which is, I could say, the understanding of Christianity as per where those churches are mainly founded, which is either in Europe or America.
Okay.
Whereas the Amazion, Abapostile, Amanazareta, those are the type of churches that are founded here in South Africa, do not have any headquarters outside of the country. So the biggest issue was that these churches felt to go, but they do not have representation in terms of our governance. They engage the ruling party, but they are not given space in terms of the ideas. For example, the issue of chaplains, in terms of the hospitals and the prisons, it is mostly people that go to these mainline churches and not abantu that are coming from Koshembe or Amazion or Apostile. So when they got together, they said, let's form a council of messianic churches or indigenous churches where we could also express ourselves in issues concerning governance. Now, they decided to have a desk which is church and state. They was asked to head that desk, which is on behalf of the church, I communicate the issues concerning the state. From there, a political party was born, and that's how I formally became part of politics. Otherwise, I would say a lot of us, we are involved in politics if we vote, if we've got issues or views about the state of the country. The only difference is that other people are not formally members of political parties.
Why did they pick you?
I think it was a matter of being in the right place at the right time, and at the same time, with the task I was given at that time, I was able to do the task diligently. And I think when they saw my capabilities, they said, but why should we look for another person to lead the organization, because you've been doing a good job. So for me, because for me, what's important, ever since I was a little boy, when you are given a task, especially by your elders, when you do the task to the best of your abilities. Yeah. So that is the motto I live with when it comes to me doing the best, especially when it comes to tasks I'm given by my elders.
You're quite young. I think 36 this year, 1987.
Yeah, in August.
You speak about elders, and in my head, I'm already thinking, why would old school traditional African churches put their trust in such a young chap? Do you have any idea? Well, besides what you've said about being diligent, but a lot of us think, especially black people, I mean, we look at our current government now. A lot of us have this idea that you can't let children or young people do the work of old people that are wise as they think. Why do you think, or what do you think they found so special in you that they were willing to say, even though he is young, we feel he's capable? And does this mean for a lot of us who think, especially the Orthodox church space, maybe it is not as ageist as we think? Maybe they actually do let young people lead?
No, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about our indigenous churches. They are sexist, there's patriarchy, they are ageist, etc. But it's absolutely not true. I'm a living example, because number one, at the time, I think I was 31. In fact, 30.
Oh, very young.
When I was given this task, I was 30, not married. I was not what you would want to associate the African indigenous church, which is an old man that's married, has a family, and
a beard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, because, our churches, they do recognize young people, they do give space to young people. I think, however, what society wants, it wants to create their own understanding. They want to impose their views on other people, whereas the churches are doing exactly what is good for the society, what is good for the church, but in their own way. So for me, I think the misconceptions lies in parts of society that want to impose their ideas on how the churches should be governed.
Are you a representative of the African transformation movement and why it was set up? Or are you a representative of a young South African that wants to see change? I ask this for a specific reason.
Yeah.
When or if a time comes where you have to make a decision, one of them being, we used to have this term called floor crossing, where politicians could shift from one party to another.
Yeah.
From Pirates to Chiefs, Chiefs to Sundowns. And would you consider something like that? Or are you like, look, I will only do work as far as I've been sent. And if I get recalled, if someone else gets brought in, I will step away. I'm actually not a politician. I am not here to serve my own personal agenda or the agenda of other South Africans. My focus is I was sent. Ngithunyiwe the African indigenous churches to serve. In your, where do you think you lie?
When the party was formed, there was a lot of voices, AZT, we don't want another Christian church. To an extent whereby, if you're to listen to all the work that we've done in Parliament since 2019 up until now, from debates, from letters that we've written to the ministers, issues that we've raised with Chapter 9 institutions, we don't take a posture of saying, this is what the Bible says, therefore, this is what should happen. We take a posture of saying, this is what is good for the country. In other words, we are not a party that is just going to impose our beliefs in terms of the doctrine of these churches. Rather, we want what is good for the country.
Yeah.
And what is good for the country, meaning young people are represented by ATM, older people are represented in ATM,
Yeah.
even people who are not anyway believers in anything are also represented in ATM, because our view is to create a country whereby, number one, there's prosperity, there's peace, and actually there's a good quality of life. And everyone would agree that in order for that to happen, we need to, in fact, have a new type of leadership, a servant type of leadership, whereby you've got leaders that actually serve you as a person.
Yeah.
You've got leaders that are not there in parliament or in politics for their own.
Yeah.
You know, you said something which I agree with. In fact, you've correctly characterized me. If I was to be recalled, I would gladly step out. I would not fight, because I was given this mandate. It is people that said, please be our representative, and people voted. When the very same people said, thank you, it's enough, mine is to step away, not fight and make things about me. Because another thing that we've got a problem with in our country, it is the issue of messianic politics, whereby the issues or problems of our country, many people want to confine the solving of our problems to an individual. That is why you're going to have hashtags on social media to say so-and-so is our last hope, you know, because what people are getting wrong is that they want to pin their hopes on an individual, an individual that could be bought, an individual that could make mistakes, instead of us having a system whereby we give Vuyo a task. If he fails, we remove him. It's not about him. It's about the mandate that we as the citizens give him to actually implement. If he fails, we move on. Yeah, but in a case whereby this individual, was better to be at a higher level than the people, that is why he thinks that he is now superior intellectually to Ebantwin. Hence you find, Ukoba, there's a lot of discontent and public service, public protests in our country, because people do not feel, Ukoba, they've got people that represent them.
Yes.
Because the leaders view themselves as, we are the ones with the wisdom, with the capabilities, therefore we are going to lead you. Instead of having leaders, Ezoti, we are given mandate by these people who are going to implement what these people say we must do.
I still want to go to my question. I don't think you answered it. I love the fact that you're speaking about a mandate and servant leadership. It's definitely something that we need to change everywhere. Is your mandate to whoever sent you at the ATM? Or rather, is that mandate more important than the mandate of South Africans?
No, the mandate of South Africans always takes precedence.
So you'd leave ATM if needs be and go serve elsewhere?
No. The mandate of South Africa is more important than ATM.
Okay.
I would leave. In fact, I don't even see myself leaving ATM, because I don't see any organization that I would identify with. Like,
sure. Well, currently.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I maybe in future, I don't know.
Sure.
But I'm not a politician. This is the first and, in my view, the last political party I will ever be part of.
Okay.
I do not see myself as a person that would chop and change political parties. I don't see myself as a person who, because in any organization, there's going to be differences. So it can't be that when things are not going my way in a particular organization, I'm going to go and perhaps try and position myself in another organization simply because I want to benefit, as a person. Yeah. So that is why, for me, I was saying when I answered firstly, the vision of the ATM is a vision of South Africa. What ATM wants is what best for the country. So for me, those two things are aligned, which is the mandate of ATM and the mandate of the citizens.
Is this one of the reasons why, look, I've watched some of your interviews and you don't dwell too much on your upbringing? Yeah. Do you think that's one of the reasons why you do that? You're like, look, I don't want to make it about me. Yeah. I don't want to tell you about my story. I don't need you to fall in love with how I struggled as a child and I used to herd cattle, Mtata. I'd like you, yes, you can know where I'm from. I'm from Mtata, Mfunde UPE, NMMU. But to be fully honest, I'm the reason I'm here and what I want to speak about is the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, indeed, because one of the problems I have with our country, especially how people view politics, we've got a problem of personality politics in our country, whereby it's all about certain personalities, instead of having politics that are based on ideas, whereby we just, conversate about how can we deal with crime, how can we deal with unemployment, how can we solve our problems? Because when we make our conversations to be centered around ideas, we are moving towards providing solutions. But when we center our conversations around certain individuals or me as a person, then it means in the minds of many people, the success of our country is dependent or is aligned to me as an individual.
Sure.
Whereas we should be inculcating a culture or a view that the success of our country resides in us as citizens actually being able to comprehend some ideas and move towards a certain direction, So my view is that we need to have conversations that bring about a mission for the current generation of our country instead of dwelling on personalities, because people come and go. There could be a person now that is a president now. 2 years later, he's dead. He passes on. What must happen to the people that pin their hopes on that one individual?
Yeah.
However, when the conversation is more about ideas, then regardless whether this person gets to die or gets to retire or whatnot, but the ideas live on, and the quest to create a better life for South Africans live on over and above what these individuals can contribute.
Do you think we're too emotional as South Africans and as voters and as politically active people?
I think, before 1994, there were very, very strong individuals like Omamoini or Krisani or Artambo. So I think there was that alignment, or there was that people related to these individuals.
Yeah.
Hence, you find that even now, you are going to have an individual, when they hype him up, they are going to refer to her as the next Winnie Mandela,
Sure.
because they want to invoke. And Winnie Mandela, I don't think those individuals, they were hyping up people for themselves. They were actually doing about their job, but so diligently to an extent whereby people naturally related to them. Now, because of the lack of leadership in this current time, Abantu want to take the power of leadership, the strength of leadership of those individuals, benze ngathi nabo they have the same quality.
Sure.
Whereas it comes naturally if, for example, you articulate yourself, you carry yourself well. You know what? We believe in you, Vuyo Zungula. I think you are doing a good job, yabo. But not a case whereby I'm going to posture myself disfunusfanisa notato Sobukwe okanye Steve Biko, simply because I know the emotional attachment that citizens will have to those individuals.
If we are to move away from emotional politics, which I'd like to think you're trying to say, in saying, look, politics shouldn't be about personalities.
Yeah.
You talk about ideas. And in ideas, I'm guessing we have problems, we look at solutions.
Yeah.
And we try to find the people that can be best suited to solve the solutions. Do you think that is the future of politics? Do you think you represent the future of politics in saying, I'm not the hero, I'm just the current servant, but I'm working within a system with a mandate, and at any time I can move aside? And do you not worry that you're only saying these things because you're still relatively young in politics?
No, not at all. Look, I got into parliament in 2019.
Yeah.
If you're to watch any of my debates, there is no time whereby I insult or, I speak ill of any person in the public space. Also, interviews, I don't do that because, again, I don't believe we should be focusing our energies on such things. Whenever we take podiums, we want to address the issues. Because, if you are living in a country whereby there's high unemployment, there's crime levels, etc., I think the little that we can do as public representatives is to at least offer solutions, because whenever people are struggling, their hope is on, we elected these people to represent us in parliament. Sure. Therefore, let's spend majority of our time as public leaders actually dealing with the issues that are affecting the people, not our own personal squabbles. Because you find that, for example, whenever a person is insulting another person, it's not because even about the politics
Yes.
or the ideas, but maybe there's deals that they have behind the scenes abangavani ngazo.
Yeah.
So I think also the people need to give airtime to such conversations. For example, I could go to Parliament, debate for 3 minutes about how we can solve the unemployment, insult no one. The next person could come, insult almost everyone.
Yeah.
But if you check on social media, in the conversations, even on TV, airtime will be given more on insults,
Of course.
or on the things that do not add value, basically.
Yes.
So I think for me, what needs to change is that we as citizens, we need to realize that maybe we're feeding these egos, we're feeding what is currently wrong in our system, because we are not encouraging leaders to be focusing on the ideas, but rather we are hyping them up whenever they speak in a certain way. So I think that is what needs to change.
A quick question for me. You spoke about the Zionists and the Apostolic as South African. Is that what you said, that those churches were born here? I wanted to know the links between Zionists and I think the Jewish faith, if there is any link. And are you saying the Apostolic faith is indigenous to us? It exists nowhere else?
No, not in the context, but it does not exist anywhere else.
Sure.
But it is churches that have got their headquarters here.
Okay.
Because if you go to, for example, there's a lot of Zionist churches. Go to, who's their leader? That leader is South African. Where does he have any link to any international body that influences him as to their doctrine and their faith and how they conduct things? There's no such. So I was speaking in that context, these churches are basically churches that are formed and founded here.
Okay.
Maybe in terms of history, there may have been people that would be coming from the different parts of the world that may have influence. But when it comes to the operations, those people or the current leaders are not in any way made to account or take a mandate from anywhere else besides here in South Africa.
What's an African indigenous church, and which are the churches that form the churches that give the mandate to ATM?
The number of churches is increasing. We've got 12 Apostles Church in Christ.
Okay.
We've got, many Zionist churches. The issue with Zionist churches is that zininzi, even though zikwazi ukuhlangana, but there's not one big Zionist church. Yabo. And I'm not referring to ZCC. I'm referring to the ones that, apho kubethu isigubhu, abantu bajikeleze, and the other Zionist churches.
What is how is the ZCC different from those?
No, in terms of the churches that we work with as a ATM. Otherwise, Nayo, it is an African indigenous church, but it is not a church that is that forms ATM or that is influential behind the driving of the ATM. 12
apostles?
Yeah.
And then various Zionist churches?
Various Zionist churches.
Those are the only churches?
For now.
You were in Durban recently, and I saw in some of your posts that you attended Sondolama Nazareta, the Nazareth Church, Ushembe, as we know. They were hosting a very huge event at Moses Mabhida Stadium. So my automatic thinking was that ATM has some link with that church. Do they form part of the churches that give a mandate?
No. So how it happens with the ATM, there are the churches that give the mandate, which is churches that were behind the formation, they give financial support, etc.
Yeah.
Then we've got churches that not necessarily do not tell their members or encourage their members, which there's many other churches. If you check my timelines, I visit various churches.
Sure.
So when it comes to, so the difference there is that some churches are part of the Council of Messianic Churches, which gives a mandate.
Okay.
Some other churches, we have a link with them as the ATM, and hence we sit down with their leaders. We understand the issues concerning the congregation. We understanding issues concerning their faith and how we as the ATM can articulate their issues to their respective departments.
Sure.
So that is where the differences are. The Nazareth Baptist Church is not necessarily part of the South African Council of Messianic Churches, but we've got good relations where we're able to go to their churches, interact with their leaders, and better understand them so that we can represent their interests as well.
There's no personality issues in the churches behind ATM?
No.
Because I'm trying to figure out who sets the mandate, because it's normally human beings. We speak about parliament now, we speak about people there, and I'm thinking at any given time, some of the leaders of these various churches might have their own personal issues and squabbles, which might end up affecting the mandate. And maybe you get recalled or they send someone specific to to drive a certain agenda.
No, like we stated, there's a Council of Messianic Churches, which is the coming together of different indigenous churches.
Yeah.
So it is those churches that get together,
Yeah.
they discuss whatever the issues may be. But the
But
ATM...
it's individuals, right? It's the leaders of the churches.
No, it's not necessarily the leaders of the churches. It is representative of the churches.
Okay.
Not necessarily the leader. But the ATM does have its own executive committee, the National Executive Committee, which because it is an independent body. But when it comes to working relations, we align ourselves, or we are part of the Council of Messianic Churches because of we were basically formed by those churches who said, let's take a stand as these churches. And one of the first conversations that came out was, we do not want another Christian church. Hence, kukhona makhosi just recently, yesterday, kukho ikumkani uNdlovuyeza, which is the king of Amampondo. ATM was celebrating his birthday yakhe, yabo, because so the ATM is not confined to churches, because even though the idea might have came from churches, but the ATM since 2018 has grown beyond being a mouthpiece of churches, has rather become a mouthpiece of everyone. Hence, Amakosi are there, Izangoma are there in the ATM. We've got atheists in the ATM. There's basically, if maybe you understand the Bible, I would say ATM gumkumbi ka Noah, whereby each and every character is there basically.
You speak very well. You answer questions very clearly and succinctly. Were you ever trained? And whether you were trained or not, how influential was the impact? Because I know at some point you had to leave university. I think you had a fees issue. And you had issues in your workspace. Like you said, it was a white African space. How influential were those experiences in saying, look, I want to train myself to be articulate. I want to be able to answer. I want to be able to speak clearly. Were you trained? Is this just who you are? How did you develop into the type of leader and speaker that you are today?
Don't know how to answer that, but so I was given this task, I think it was June 2018.
Yeah.
Now, ATM is formally registered. There is a registration certificate from the IEC.
Yeah.
There's a conference. Okay, President Vuyo Zungula, I need to speak. Obviously, I spoke. Now, from there, we went across the country launching the ATM without any media interaction or very minimal media interaction. 2019, there's a member that joined the party. So there was a press conference. You won't believe that day. I woke up, went to work. I think I took the 12 o'clock train from Centurion to Joburg, where the press conference was.
Sure.
Go there, have to engage the media without any training. In the evening, I'm called by one of the media houses. I had to go for another interview in the evening there without any media training. So I've never received any media training. I believe I'm like this because, number one, I'm genuine. Number two, those experiences of not being able to complete my studies due to fees, they actually shaped me to understand there are some difficulties. There's a situation I had whilst I was doing my second or third year. Very, very difficult moment in my life. So I spoke to one of our leaders, Utatum Vuyana. He said to me, Bona Vuyo, sometimes God okufaka in difficult positions so that you get to experience hardships, not because you deserve them, but because he's preparing you for a certain role.
Yeah.
In the sense that if now you are a person who has it easy in life, you won't be able to understand and relate to problems abanye abantu.
Yeah.
So I would believe some of the challenges that I've faced in life have shaped who I am. And when it comes to communication, I think I'm genuine. I've got no other ulterior motives. andihlali up and analyze, okay, how can I answer this question so that it makes political sense? Because sometimes we get to be stuck up as abantu on, we need to be politically correct. And I love how even how we are having an engagement now, it does not feel like that formal interview whereby you need to have your thinking cap on, it's just engagements, which I think in my view, it brings about people knowing, ukuba this is the person behind this public personality that he may be. Because again, abantu baya actor because what needs to be said in order to win over abantu.
Sure.
But once abantu are off character, then you get to see them. Hence you find ukuba a person speaks in a certain way in parliament. Outside of parliament, whenever in fact, when he does not think ukuba there are cameras watching, he speaks in a different way. So such people, in my view, are not worthy to be leaders, because as a leader, you need to be genuine to the people. You can't be Penuel here because you're addressing a certain crowd or audience, or when you are in another space, you address them differently. I don't believe it should work like that.
But you realize most human beings are like that. I'm not even speaking about public figures. Our family members, our friends, the way they are at home versus the way they are at work, versus the way they are at church. It's almost like we've created a society where you have to play certain different characters in different spaces. You don't believe in that at all. Or you think we should be working on a society where we're encouraging people to... Because, look, I think part of my concern is you sound very well. You sound very intelligent. You speak appropriately. You look very clean. So if this is who you are, it becomes easy for you to be sold anyway, because you happen to tick the right boxes. The next kid has dreadlocks, dirty beard, happens to maybe be female in a patriarchal world, happens to maybe swear a lot, is an atheist. They also want to be authentically themselves. But certain spaces don't allow them. Do you believe we should be pushing people to be authentically themselves, or is it fine that people must play different characters and respect the space that they're in?
There's a difference between respecting the space you are in and not being yourself. In the sense that if, for example, I am going to a particular church where I'm required ukuba mandihambe ngenyawo, I'm respecting that space. If I'm required when I'm respecting that space in the sense that I need to kneel when talking to the leader, I have to do that because I'm respecting their belief, their customs in that church. Now, when you are authentic, it comes, which is the basics, which is respect. You respect abantu based on them. You have a respect even if they do not hold certain titles. So if you go to a certain institution, you respect that institution, their customs and how they do things. So when you are authentic, then it means awuzufuna to impose your views. Like I can't go to church and swear because I know the space I'm in does not require that. But I can go when I'm campaigning ekasi, use a bit of slang here and there because the people I'm addressing, they will relate well in that regard. So, but when I'm authentic, I'm going to be able to relate with everyone. However, when I want to impose me as a person, I can't, it means I'm going to go to ekasi and not want to engage them ngendlela that would understand me, or I'm going to go to a Sentin or some of these posh spaces and I won't be able to engage them ngendlela that would make them understand me. So I would say people must always be authentic, but they must recognize ukuba the different spaces that we have, we need to respect the cultures, the norms of those particular spaces instead of wanting to impose our views on those spaces.
Even if they're oppressive, like let's say a racist white Afrikaans workspace, you must still respect the culture in that space?
No. When you respect obviously abantu who are doing izinto ngendlela right that is not oppressive to anyone. If you are going to be finding yourself, for example, faced with a criminal, a criminal is a person that wants to abuse and take something from you. So you can't. what you can do then is that for safety reasons, but not an extent whereby you are going to respect him. At his happy phone, now the phone, yabo. You are going to try and flee, yabo. So the point I'm making, even if you are in a racist space, you need to confront racism because it is something that is wrong. So respect does not mean you allow nobangubani to do whatever. Respect means these are the institutions as Ikoyo with progressive cultures and progressive customs. You respect them. But if you are going to have regressive institutions and you're going to have regressive customs in our society, you need to deal or you need to confront ezo zinto because they are not bringing about the type of country we want to live in.
Isn't that imposing? I know one of the examples you used in the company that you were working in is that in the meetings, in emails, they were sending in Afrikaans.
Yeah.
You go to a certain church space and they ask you to take off your shoes. Why is this a form of racism? If let's say it's a white Afrikaans built company and they speak Afrikaans, but here you're happy to respect. Is it not now you bringing your personal, I don't mind walking barefoot here, or maybe even speaking the language they speak, Zulu, Tswana. Now that they're speaking Afrikaans, I'm like, no, you guys are regressive. Here, you might even argue that they're progressive.
The context of that particular workspace,
Yeah.
when I was applying, I never said I knew how to speak Afrikaans.
Okay.
So if there was a meeting whereby they are engaging them alone in Afrikaans, I don't have an issue.
Okay.
Because majority of the workers are Afrikaans in any case.
Sure.
If I was working, let's say in Northwest, majority of the workers are speaking Tswana, it's not an issue. But when you address me knowing very well, but I don't know the language, you can't expect me to be able to respond in Afrikaans or even comprehend the Afrikaans that you are talking to me. So hence, the conversation was, I don't know this language. So when you address me, let's address each other in a medium of communication where we can both understand each other. I'm not going to impose to say, speak English from the time you get to the office up until later on.
Sure.
But the spaces whereby we need to interact, understand, but I don't know your language.
Lindiwe Mazibuko, in a clip or in an interview once, spoke about one of the things that blew her mind when she got to Parliament is how people would fight passionately and aggressively in Parliament and on camera.
Yeah.
And then as soon as there's a break, they're smoking together, having coffee, having fat laughs. Donna, why did you say that to me? Looking at the type of principled man you are, do you get along with other members of Parliament, number one? And do you feel there's a lot of fakeness there that maybe should actually be exposed to South Africans? Because these people are meant to be serving them, but clearly you use the word act. They're there to perform. But they genuinely don't believe in what they're doing.
I relate well with almost all members of Parliament I interact with.
Yeah.
I don't believe we need to fight amongst each other. You know, fine, we can have differences here and there, but we must never elevate those differences to an extent whereby we end up hating each other. Because, you know, when we hate, we give birth to another generation of, you know, people who are hating and
Yes.
we don't go anywhere as a people. Now, when it comes to acting, a lot of people act there. I had a similar encounter. I was debating, I think it was 2019. I think it was a debate on reducing unemployment. So I spoke about the informal economy and how we need to use the informal economy as a means of reducing unemployment in our country.
Yeah.
So people are heckling, howling. But when we're outside, Kukutata from the ANC comes to me, shakes my hand and pulls me closer and says, Now, and I asked him, but Ngapaka, you were the one that was heckling me. I saw you. Ati, you know what, Vuyo, Fondin, you need to understand, the spaces that we're in, we need to advance our interests as an organization. So what you're going to have is that even if, for example, what I'm saying as a representative from the ATM, they agree, which is a band from the ANC, but they will not want to appear as if they are led intellectually by ATM or they take ideas from the ATM, because the posture of that organization must be, we as the ANC, we've got the intellectual capacity Hence, we are not dependent on other parties. So it's like that with almost all parties to an extent whereby regardless if party A says something wrong, when a member from party A says something wrong, he'll always get, applauses from the members of party A.
Yeah.
Heckles, even if he says something right, most of the time they will get, heckles from party B or party C. That is what I think is wrong because, fine, we are representing parties, but when we are there, we need to put the interest of the people first. And not because our party ideologies or manifestos or policies are not enough, but I think the fact that we've got a constituency system in our country whereby there's 14 parties represented in parliament, there has to be that coming together. I can't, because look at, for example, now, there's no party that has a 2/3 majority. There's no way in which one party in parliament can say, we have the mandate to change the constitution. We have the mandate, we have a 2/3 majority to do whatever we want. Meaning parties need to learn to work together. And for that working together to happen, there needs to be that understanding. Kuba, even if someone from an opposition party says something much better than what you've articulated, you will need to recognize that is actually a good idea that would benefit the citizens. Not to have a system or a culture whereby we are so self-centered as parties to an extent whereby there's only one thing that is correct. It is only something that is coming from us. Anything else that is coming from another party, it is incorrect. So that is what is happening in our parliament and in our politics, and maybe that is why our politics are stagnant. We are not inculcating a culture whereby we can collaborate as the different players in the political system for the betterment of our citizens.
But you understand why they like that?
Interests.
Because it's mostly money based, in my opinion. Because there's someone that funds, or there are people that fund political parties and they have agendas, mostly money. You have a unique situation where you're funded and supported by a council of churches, number one. So I'd like to argue they're not in the business of making money. Yeah. They're in the business of spiritual growth, healing, etc. Number two, you're relatively young, so you can be more nimble than an old party that has old principles. And number three, you claim that the ATM is aligned to the needs of the country. So the funding you have, whatever you're arguing, you're almost willing to even agree with good parties that say the right things because you're aligned. A lot of these other guys, their mandate doesn't come from funders who care about or are aligned to the country. And they don't have a choice. That's why they can speak to you on the side and be like, you're very right, but if I agree with you, I don't have a job. I don't get funding. You're lucky because you represent a political movement that is progressive and understanding, and maybe you can explain. I can't.
Bona Apo, you've correctly captured what is, holding us back as a country. I argue about when you vote for a party, understand about who's funding this party, because it is not the manifesto, the policies that will actually that these people are going to implement. Whoever that becomes a member of parliament or parties that are in parliament, they are going to be in parliament to do the bidding of their funders. I made an example about who Tito Mboweni. Tito Mboweni, when he was a minister of finance, one of the things that happened was that Old Mutual disinvested from being part of the JSE, and they're listed now, I think, the London Stock Exchange. That is when he was Minister of Finance. Hardly 6 months after he left, he joined Old Mutual, I think as one of the board members, if not chairperson. So, which clearly shows, similarly, go to the likes of Opravin Godan. They have got shares in almost all companies. Many senior ANC leaders, they even got shares in banks. They would have a policy as a governing party to say, let's have a state bank. But at the same time, they personally will have shares or membership of boards in some of these banks. To an extent now, Ukoba, how can they use their positions as being public representatives or ministers to advocate for the needs of the people by having a state bank, knowing very well about the presence or the formation of a state bank will actually reduce the profits of the very same companies. So that is what is happening. You are going to have parties that are funded by international organizations, and you get to see, okay, when a person speaks, it's not really his views, or it's not really something that is authentic and genuine to the cause of the people. Rather, it is the interest of whoever that is funding him. Well, Thomas Sankara said, whoever funds you controls you. So what we've not really interrogated now as a society, Kuba, let's understand Kuba, who funds Vuyo. Because we know about, when we know about this is a person that funds Vuyo, we'll get to understand Kuba. Now, the significant influence will come from the funder, because when a person votes, because many political leaders, they interact with the voters only when it's election season.
True.
Whereas a funder has got you, can call you anytime. We debate now. After you sit down, there's a text saying immediately after that thing, come to me, and you need to account on your statements. Yeah. So you're going to have abantu. In fact, now we don't have a democracy whereby political leaders are representing the people. Rather, you have political leaders that purport to represent the people, but in fact, they are representing whoever that is funding them.
Do you believe that politicians should not have business interests? Because you're very right. It's something I've been raising for many years. If I have shares and a wealth portfolio, say it's worth 20 million rand.
Yeah.
In Discovery, Mediclinic, in Curo, Stadio Now, in Capitec, Time Bank, and some of the more established banks, what incentive do I have to fix public healthcare? Because if I do, people won't use private healthcare and my shares will tank. Same thing with education. Same thing with a state bank.
Yeah.
Do you believe that politicians shouldn't have any business interests, number one? And number two, what's my number two? Oh, do you think that the way government is run in politics should be funder free? Which means that you've got 400 MPs, or however many MPs, you've got however many political parties, but none of them are allowed to collect money from anyone. And maybe they're not even allowed to collect donations in kind. We won't give you free advertising. You can't get anything. Just do the work. Go to interviews. If you as a political organization can create your own newspaper, social media, market through that, but you cannot get any money from anyone, because we know as soon as you get 100 Rand from UPEN, automatically now you open 200 Rand worth of value.
Politicians, in my view, must or should be allowed to have business interests, because remember, when you are in the public space or public office, you are there for a limited time period. You are elected for 5 years, or sometimes you get to be recalled. So people must be allowed space to make a living outside of politics, so that they do not get to fight over the public positions and they make it theirs. Because maybe that is how dictators get to be born, because they may have no prospects of surviving outside of the political space. However, the issue is when a person, you can basically see, okay, this person is no longer acting in the interest of the greater good or the mandate which is in the constitution. Rather, he's acting in the interests of, whatever shares or influence that his business interests are. So that is where it becomes problematic, whereby you elevate your personal interests over and above the interests of the nation. Now, it takes a person who would somewhat say, you know what, I can't save I can't be a minister of finance. Whereas this is what, for example, is needed in our country, which is transformation of the banking sector. Now, as a person, I've got so many shares in all of these companies. Therefore, I'm being set up to fail, or I'm not going to be able to objectively act in accordance to my office. Now, when it comes to funding, I think, people must be allowed, to receive funding. I like how the funding is confined to the borders of our country, not external influences. Now, that funding must be declared so that if a person, for example, am given funding or assistance by in nightclubs, then you are going to see, like, it's an open secret, but some of these nightclubs, it is hubs whereby drugs are get to be distributed, etc. Therefore, if you are going to see, okay, this person is actually funded or has got close ties to people that own in nightclubs, and it is publicly available information, then you are going to see how I am very, very soft when dealing with the issue of drugs, because I know ukuba I'm going to be manzisa isonga sam xa ndisenza kanjalo. So allow people to receive funding. However, the biggest responsibility, in my view, lies in the nation or the citizens being informed ukuba who is bankrolling some of our politicians, and they must understand the link between whoever that is bankrolling them and the attitude of the person that is bankrolled when it comes to effecting their public duties.
I think these two answers are the first two answers that make you sound like a politician, in my opinion. I think in human nature, it is difficult to be able to ascertain the distinction between business, personal interest, and a mandate, because we're human. And as much as you're saying, look, almost like being a sports star or being a musician where you're seasonal or your career won't last that long, I think we maybe need to look into alternative solutions to look, this person has to do business. Otherwise, when they leave politics, what else can they do? Because we end up imprisoning ourselves to that conflict by default. So I personally think we need to innovate outside of that, whatever that means.
Yeah.
If these people fix healthcare, schooling, certain spaces which currently are free, they shouldn't worry, because their kids will get a good education, good healthcare, because they fixed it. But if we allow them to play this balancing act, it becomes very tricky for me.
Yeah, I would say in the best case scenario.
Yeah.
But that should be how things should be.
Yeah.
But I think gradually, when you are fixing a problem, you don't move from the worst case to the best case. Sometimes you move from the worst case to at least a bad space, or go to neutral, you go to good, then you go to the best. So in terms of navigating, I would say, Ugoba, here is what is wrong. Let's move or reduce the impact of what is wrong from being a worst case to at least bad. Move from bad to good. Because if you do it gradually, systematically like that, then you are most likely going to win over the very same people that ordinarily, if you were to say we are going to move from the worst to the best, would want to hold on to their power and want to hold on to say it's not going to happen, because they know Ugoba, they've got the power to actually stop legislation that would lead to these innovations. So I agree with you in terms of, let's go to the best case. But where I'm proposing, I'm saying, Ugoba, sometimes in order to get to the best, if we're at the worst, we need to go through certain phases.
I hear you. I disagree, but I hear you. I disagree purely because I've found that business people in particular, if you give them time to maneuver, they will maneuver. While you're moving from worst to best, they will position themselves. Like the example you said about funding. If you're saying our funding is only confined to local, I can only imagine that foreign interests will make sure that they find a local person they give money to. I saw when they started publishing who funds, of which a lot of parties still don't declare. There was, I think, one of the Oppenheimer daughters. I think she has a trust. She donated through the trust. And in my head, automatically, red flag. I was like, that means everyone who doesn't want to be seen to be funding will speak to this person with the trust, send the money there so that it looks like it comes from one person, and then she represents those interests. She'll invite the politician to visit her for tea and be like, oh, some friends of mine will be here, and those friends are actually the funders. So I'm personally very pessimistic about the political situation and the movement. And I do want to emphasize what you're saying, which is very true. I sat with a mate at some point, and his family is very big in politics historically. And he was saying, look, a lot of people today especially, but even historically, realized that politics was a stepping stone to their own personal ambitions. People come in saying they want to serve, and as soon as they have some type of foothold they start making these promises to the private sector to cushion themselves when they leave, to a point where you had a situation with Trevor Manuel, who when JJ Tabane was accusing him and Tito Mboweni, I think, of being involved in the formation of COPE. In responding and suing JJ Tabane, one of the things that came out was Trevor Manuel saying, I am no longer a member of the ANC. Many of us were shocked. Some people were like, you must understand, some of these people didn't join the party, or maybe they joined the party for noble reasons.
Yeah.
And later on were like, no, man, I can use this thing so that because I know I won't be here forever, I'm good. He sits on the board of the Rothschild. He was sitting on the board of Old Mutual. You've Tito Mboweni was an advisor to Goldman Sachs, and many, like, even the young kids coming in to politics today, tenders and the like, or youth league, sorry, they come in specifically for tenders and connection, and we don't have servants, which is why I was worrying about taking this away. And I wanted to ask your opinion on a couple of parties, but maybe I'll bring this one up now. U-Andile Mngxitama and BLF. In particular, because you referenced Thomas Sankara. And there used to be a Sankara oath, apparently, at the EFF. The Sankara oath had a lot to do with, let's say, Thomas Sankara, Sheikh Guevara, in the way that they served more than focusing on personal interests. And I wanted to hear your thoughts. So I'm asking about U-Andile Mngxitama and BLF. I don't want to be malicious and mischievous. No, let me not share my thoughts. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on, you also mentioned these two individuals, and they're actually in my notes. Robert Mangaliso Sobugwe, founded the PAC, the Pan-Africanist Congress. Stephen Bantu Bigo was involved in the formation of the AZAP. I'd like to hear what you think of U-Andile and BLF as a separate question. And then I'd like to hear your thoughts on Sobugwe, Bigo, and why, when it came to service, you didn't decide to rather join the PAC or AZAP.
Yeah. In varsity, AZASCO, which is a student wing of AZAPO, we had good relations with them, the people that were leading at the time, to an extent whereby they asked me to be one of their candidates for elections at the time. Unfortunately, I was leading another organization, and the view was that I can't be a face of the campaign of AZASCO and that organization. But
was that organization political?
No, it was not political.
Okay.
So there's that history where I interacted with them. Again, I never made it my goal to be a formal politician or to formally be part of politics, simply because I don't like how politics is all about, number one, self-enrichment, and you don't have values in politics that are actually about the greater good of the people. The values that are there, like you are saying, Koba, people from the ANC Youth League, in fact, even from SASCO, the direction is one. Try and amass however support you can get with the view of being close to power so that you can benefit as an individual.
100%.
So for me, I will never agree with that. And I would never be part of a space whereby that is how things are done in order for you to actually, go anywhere. Also, I like how EPAC and AZAPO now are coming together, having joined, programs and activities, because we need unity. Similarly with U-Andile, we've got good conversations with him, and we're working towards finding each other so that come 2024, we're able to work together, because there's so many parties that actually have the same views, or pretty much the same views on the bigger questions, because sometimes we focus ourselves as parties on differing on the little things that do not matter much, whereas we agree on the bigger things that matter more than the little things. And we decide, but you know what, we're not going to work together because we're divided by Ndwencing, whereas on the bigger issues, we're actually speaking the same language. And Lando is not taking us any forward, because the future of our country does not reside in the creation or formation of many new political parties. Rather, it is now the time whereby political parties need to find a way to collaborate, find a way to work together, so that there's a stronger voice when it comes to in parliament in terms of our body politic.
Do you think we can look into a future of political party mergers? Not coalitions, not collaboration, but the end of ATM, PAC, AZAPO, BLF. Maybe one of those names can be taken, but merging all of these parties into a new... Do you think something like that could happen?
Yeah, anything could happen, even though, some proposals, I'm sure you've heard, I think with General Olomisa talking about the creation of an umbrella political party whereby the other political parties do not necessarily lose their identity, their structures. However, there's a bigger umbrella or broader umbrella whereby everyone can be accommodated. Because again, some people are attached to certain political parties in terms of their names, their operations, etc. So in order to deal maybe with that attachment, instead of collapsing everything, maybe one of the things that could work is the umbrella body. But I want to stress this point, Ukuba, the more we come together, have conversations where we could basically find each other, it is the more it is going to be possible for us to actually resolve some of the problems. Because it is my strong view, the problems that we have require a 2/3 majority for us to be able to resolve them. Because
you believe in that?
We need to
realistically?
change. We need to change the constitution.
No, but do you really believe we need a 2/3 majority?
We believe, Tina, as a ATM and personally, Ukuba, the problems that we have, the root cause of the problems, it is some elements of the constitution that require that the constitution needs to be changed. Okay. And for that to happen, you need a 2/3 majority. For example, the bill now on land expropriation,
yes,
and they word it very nicely, but with nil compensation. When they speak of a start date, they say, I think it's 1912 or 1910, whereas majority of the land dispossessions happened before then. Now, if you do not have the 2/3 majority, it means you cannot deal with that time factor. When are you going to deal? When does this period start? But when you've got a 2/3 majority, you can have a statement, or you can effectively say from 1652, instead of 1912, whereas, because the current bill speaks about 1912, whereas it is a known fact to the large portions of land dispossessions happened, years before then. So hence I'm saying, Kuba, when you've got a constitution when you've got the powers to create or draft a new constitution, then you are going to best represent the people. Otherwise, if you are going to operate within this constitution, within the same legal framework, then it means you are going to find it difficult to navigate, because some of the things that you are going to try and advocate for, you are going to have a stumbling block because the constitution allows it. For example, our constitution allows a person who's been a citizen, who stayed in a country for 5 years, to actually occupy public office. Meaning you could have in future a person that is born from another country, come live in South Africa for 5 years. After 5 years, he becomes influential, he has the money to campaign, and he gets to run public office, he becomes president, And many countries don't do that. That is why even with Obama, the question as to where was he born became also a topic, So now the constitution allows that now. If you want to change that, you can't if you do not have the powers to change the constitution.
This 2/3 to me sounds like a form of imprisonment again. Because my question would be, who said the 2/3? Why is it not 3/4? Why is it not 2/4, which is a half? Who said 2/3, and why are all of us being held at ransom by it? If we can find a way to prove that the people don't agree.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two, I'm yet to see an alternative to the Constitution, because I've heard a lot of people criticize it, including myself. I personally think our Constitution generally is a pile of rubbish, because I think it is built on idealistic principles, and by doing that, it almost discounts atrocities which needed to be resolved as a matter of urgency. And of course, the ANC government and some of the people that agree with them have kind of allowed that to happen. Having the rest of the world tell us we have the greatest constitution in the world because it protects inherited privilege. I'm yet to see an alternative constitution, and not a tweak because I don't want a tweak. I don't want, let's move it from 2/3 to 50%. Let's maybe not put nil compensation and put, I want a book that says, this is how the country is going to be governed. This is how it's going to be governed, number one. But before it gets governed, and this doesn't need to be a constitution, this can be a proposal saying, here is a 50, 100-year plan of how we're going to fix the injustices of the past. And as soon as these things have been ticked or this time has lapsed, then this constitution comes in, which will govern us. But this plan is to say, all of this is going to get sorted. And I'm just saying, I'm yet to hear of someone who's drafted that. I'd still like to hear your thoughts on Ubigo Nosobugo as men, and if you would consider, outside of being friendly and collaborating, if you would consider joining and potentially leading us up when the PAC.
Okay, let me start with the constitution. Rightfully, a constitution here too. I think again, when the constitution was drafted, there was a lot of guilt that the drafters had, because they had a view of we want to show the world Kuba we are going to be the opposite of what apartheid did. And the expectation of the world was that the black people that will be in government at the time will actually oppress or treat kakobi, the white minority that was oppressing them. So I think they had that at the back of their mind when they were drafting the constitution, So which is for me, that is why the root cause of our problems lies in the spirit of that constitution. But it was not a constitution that was drafted to say, how do we correct the wrongs of the past and make sure there's justice at the same time, and creating a country from a legal constitutional framework whereby the people themselves have got the final voice. And in saying that, perhaps the reason why there is no document that is saying this is what the constitution should be, because abantu have been brainwashed to think Ukuba is the best constitution. Therefore, I think the work now, which we have to be doing, is to plug holes on this constitution so that abantu bayazi Ukuba in these so-called best constitutions in the world, here are the elements that are actually not progressive. So that abantu can realize, no, actually told a lie when we are told this is the best constitution. I've got good relations. Like sometimes I go to PAC events, good relations with the president of Azapo. But like I stated earlier on, I don't see myself as a politician that would have ambitions of leading other political parties. Even with the ATM, I'm here to serve. And when my time is, I'll have to be a member, contribute where I could, from where I would be. I'm not a person that is fixated on positions, because leadership, there's a difference between leadership and a position. You could have a person that is in a leadership position, but there's no leadership. You could have a person that has no leadership position, but this person is a leader, knows what is good for the people, fights for the people, and he's going to use whatever space of influence is in to actually fight for the people. So now I would want to understand myself as a person that does not require a leadership position of being a president or a senior leader of a party in order for me to actually make a difference.
Do you identify with, do you admire people like Sobugo and Bigo?
Definitely.
I asked this because when I initially asked the question, I know Ngitama is a big Bigoist. Is ATM a pro-black Pan-Africanist party?
Yeah.
Is it a racist party?
No.
You understand why I'm asking that?
Yeah.
No, do you?
No, okay, wait, before you...
because Andile and other people don't believe black people can be racist. So there's a reason why I'm asking it like that.
Yeah. Utatu Sobukwe said there's only one race, the human race. So in that context, that is what we believe in the ATM, Kuba. There's only one race, which is the human race. However, because of the past that we have in our country, you have the white minority that had the privileges and the benefits of over 400 years. Therefore, in order for us to reach a point in time whereby we could say there's one human race whereby we're equal in terms of opportunities, we're equal in terms of how we could benefit from this country, the economy, and our laws, we need to look at uplifting this race or this group of people, which is the Africans in our country, that have been subjugated. So in our view, ukuba, we need to work towards a country whereby we are one as a people, but for that to happen, we need to tilt our focus more on this group of people that even currently, it's more difficult for a black person in the townships, in the villages, to actually make it in life than what, if you are a white person. So that is why we need to focus on the previously and the currently disadvantaged in order to reach a level or a state whereby we could say we are one as a people.
Why not be pro-poor instead of pro-black?
Pro-poor?
Because it'll overlap maybe 95, 99%. But why not say pro-poor? Because one of the issues people like myself have with black economic empowerment, of course, it's with its implementation.
Yeah.
It's that you find wealthy black people who even historically their families were well off. They had land, whether it was tribal or otherwise, they had livestock. And because of political connection, they've exploited BEE with some of their white friends and other. And even to this day, you've got, as an example, a poor white child comes from a poor white family who didn't benefit from apartheid, and maybe they're not even racist. We don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. That child who doesn't come from wealth and privilege outside of their race, if you put them and one of these BEE billionaires, millionaires, this black person still gets the job. This white person doesn't. And when you look at the characteristics of this rich black person, they don't act in any way different than rich white people who benefited from apartheid and colonization. So I'm just asking, why is the stance pro-black and not pro-poor? Because this leads now to my question around ATM being racist. It was one of the issues that Andile had with the PLF. You speak about the human race, but if you're pro-black, it almost assumes that you'd prefer for non-blacks to not really be part of your movement, or at least for now, until there's equality. Why are you pro-black and not pro-poor?
Yeah, when we talk about the issue of racism and the system of our country, you understand that, racism is a system that subjugates and relegates the majority of people, which is Africans in our country, to a life of poverty. So it's something that is systematic. Now, when we are addressing it, we need to address the system itself. And having the privilege of being a victim of the very same system, in another company, I was training, 4 or 5 young chaps there. Some of them were white, only to find that I was earning 7K, and this white person I was training was earning 11K. Yeah. Now, if you are going to look at that person who earned 11K, he himself and as an individual might not be racist. Yeah. But if we are going to focus on the certain individuals, whether they might be racist or might not be racist, then we are going to struggle in terms of addressing the system, because the problems are not necessarily the few individuals that may or may not be racist, but it is a system that keeps abantu abamnyama to be confined in a certain type of life. So that notion ukuba we are pro-black, it is understanding ukuba the system ekhoyo is anti the black person. Therefore, that does not mean ukuba we are when we are addressing now the system that is anti abantu abamnyama, we are necessarily anti-white people. There's a statement ukuba being pro-black is not being anti-white. That is what a lot of people misconceive ukuba when we are saying ukuba let us uplift abantu that have been subjugated. Londo does not mean ukuba you are going to oppress the people that have been in privilege. You are going to uplift babe ku level enye, because once babe ku level enye, it's only then that we could enjoy life the same way. So we need to fight the system. We need to change the system. We need to transform the system and not find ourselves trying to, trying to identify individuals here and there. The BEE story as a system or as an economic system or a policy is a different topic for another day.
Yeah.
But from a systematic point of view, our view is that we need to change the system whereby if you are born black in our country, there's high chances of you being in poverty. If you are born white in our country, even if you are born from a poor family, but there's higher chances of you actually succeeding in life.
This is going to be similar to the Constitution question, because the race conversation is so complicated and layered. Let me first make a point before I ask my question. I saw on Twitter, I think it was a black American man, and he was saying it is not fair to say all white people are, how did he put it? All white people are bad because of what happened during slavery or with slavery. Saying all, or assuming all white people are bad because of slavery is almost like saying all black people are bad because of crime, if the crime is committed by black people. And got a lot of likes, a lot of retweets, a lot of people supporting him. And I was annoyed by that tweet. I decided to respond, and my response was, I agree with you. Generally, it cannot be fair to say generally all white people are bad because they were white people that enslaved. Similarly, it is not correct to say all black people are criminals or are bad because of black criminals. But I responded by saying the difference is that the whites who enslaved people, the benefits that were reaped benefited the majority, if not all white people. Whereas when black criminals commit crimes, they don't benefit the majority of black people. You might actually find that they get good black people being seen as criminals without the benefit. Like white masters, slave owners, their privilege trickles down to the non-racist white person. Black criminals, which is one of the issues South Africans have with the BE elites. If you guys want to be corrupt and let's say work with white people and steal money, can we see similar, maybe this goes to my question, can we see similar systems being built which uplift the black child? So my question is this. Anyways, I was just raising that because I understand a lot of people that call me a sellout and whatever, they think I don't understand. I actually understand some of the issues with the focusing on a minority versus. Why have black Africans failed to build strong systems? Why is the desire to, like the Constitution, tweak and be included, get into a white company and be like, you guys are not progressive, instead of building your own? And I wanted to ask this earlier. I question and attack and criticize the church a lot, traditional leaders a lot, because they themselves, I'd like to think, pretend to be victims of the same colonialists and apartheid oppressors. But they've failed fundamentally. And I criticize them. I'll own this. And I apologize to the people whose mandate you serve and others. I've criticized the Nazareth Baptist Church, Sontola Shembe, Ubabu Izar Shembe, who's big hero of mine. I've criticized the Likhanyane family and the ZCC Church. I've criticized the Zulu Kingdom, not just Tumisu Zulu, his father, Uzwelithini, may he rest in peace, and other people, and all these other kings and chiefs. Why have you guys failed to build systems that help your people so that your people don't have to go and beg to be included in other people's systems? Because then that defeats, if the fight, to what you're saying, is not are you a racist white or not? The fight is the system is racist. We want to fix the system versus, oh, the system is racist. Let us build either another racist system which favors the black child or an equal system where we're saying, if you come here, white child, please know that you will be treated like anyone else. But build them so that if people want to work, if people want to live in a certain space, we don't have to deal with legacies, because part of the problem is the legacies. Maybe in closing, I'll say this. We speak patriarchy, but there's a female privilege, which obviously when people are exposed with their privileges, they like to pretend like, the courts in this country, the media in this country and in other places, when a woman is killed, big story. When a woman is struggling to see her child, huge story. When a man is killed, when a man is struggling with legacy. Even another man will tell you, Baba, you're a man. Why do you want to spend so much time with your child? Baba, that guy was killed. It's a man. And you're like, but you see, there's an imbalance here, and there's a problem. So you'd want to fix the systems to be like, look, I just wanted to know in your side why you believe, and I'm gonna call it a failure. Maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
I'm comparing it. The departure point is white colonial systems, which may not be the best. But why do you think black leaders in the religious space, I mean, we've got the Vatican City as an example. In the traditional space, we've got certain kingdoms. I don't know if Switzerland is still a monarch that are thriving. Monaco, I think, has a king, if I'm not mistaken. Why have black Africans failed to build other systems that ensure that they don't get treated like garbage in spaces that actually don't want them?
You know, in your statement, the institutions that the churches or the monarchs have actually done well, it is basically institutions that have benefited from the oppressing and colonizing of Africans. Whereas when it comes to Africa, so it's very difficult to compare, for example, ubukumkani bamaMpondomise and the monarch in Switzerland, because this one was oppressed, was colonized, and they had all of their wealth taken from them. So
wait, we need to stop there. They had their wealth taken from them.
Yeah.
Are you saying kingdoms like the Zulu kingdom at some point were poor and didn't have land and resources and wealth?
No, you'll know that there were periods whereby they had these resources and wealth, but there was also a period whereby, especially the British monarch actually came in those in those lands, actually fought people, actually wanted to colonize people. So it is in that context I'm saying, Koba, these ones never from the European monarchs we're talking about were never colonized.
I hear you.
Whereas here we're dealing with Abantu that have been colonized, and then there was apartheid. Then I think the biggest issue that happened in 1994, there's a black government, there's a black government. Now, a lot of people, either from churches, traditional leadership, etc., they said, now that we've got a black government, we are going to pin our hopes on these leaders of ours to actually, transform the country, make sure that the country works in our favor. Instead of them saying, we are going to build on our own, they put all of their trust on these institutions, which is the government institution that is led by black leaders. Because remember, when they were fighting, when we are led by Bantu Abamnyama who understand our issues and our problems, when they're in power, they are going to govern kakuhle and they're going to assist us in terms of empowering us. So that is what I think is what the mistake that happened in 1994. And then currently you find that a lot of people are not well informed about what the churches are doing. Even if, for example, it is something that Omnia could say, but it's something small. Because what makes AfriForum and these other white organizations to prosper, because again, it is through the benefits of the legacy. Whereas ABBA, they find it difficult because they do not have a legacy that they could build on. Some of the churches that we interact with, some of them, they're actually into writing even books. There's a spiritual home, a Revelation spiritual home that is led by Mboni, Utatu Khadebe. They even have children's books whereby they're educating the next generation to say, Abantwana must understand who we are, where we are coming from, and where we should be going. So there is building that is happening there. Even TACC has got a lot of programs that are centered around building of young people, making sure young people are not just going to exist in our country and find themselves in a life of drugs and yonke. So, but I think maybe where we are harsh in terms of our criticism is that we compare institutions that are trying to find their feet because, number one, they were colonized and there was apartheid and they pinned their hopes on the government that has failed them. Now they are trying to build versus institutions that have been there for the longest time. But I do want to say, Koba, for me, I take criticism always in a positive manner. And I think the society will always benefit from alternative voices or different opinions or being criticized by, you should be doing better, you're failing here. And I hope some of our leaders, either in the traditional space and the religious space, actually understand when people are saying, but we are not necessarily happy with some of your conduct, it's not an attack on you as a person. Rather, it is that thinks you could do better, but here are a few elements that are...
You're speaking from pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Well, before I ask your thoughts on the standard questions, do you want whites, Indians, and coloreds to vote for ATM? Or is that not really important? Or is that important to you? Are you going to campaign to them? And if you campaign to them, what are you saying to them?
No, we campaign kuwo wonke umuntu. We campaign whites, Indians, coloreds. We campaign even people in the prisons. We campaign each and every person that is a South African, because our offering as the ATM is to provide solutions, to say, put aside what has been there.
Yeah.
We can't be complaining or just analyzing the problems. We need to focus on what are the solutions. So if we as the ATM take over the government next year, we've got solutions when it comes to the education system, which will benefit everyone. And, when it comes to the issue of unemployment, once you deal with the unemployment problem, then you are reducing the number of people that are dependent on the state.
Yes.
Once you do that, then it means you are freeing up some money that could be used to benefit all sectors of society, whether a person is rich or a person is wealthy. So it's in the interest of everyone to be aligned with an organization that will solve the problems we face in our country.
Do you think every South African should vote for ATM?
Yeah.
Every South African?
Every South African that wants a South Africa to be an ethically governed country, whereby you have servant leaders, people that serve you, people that, you can call them, you can WhatsApp them, you can text them on Facebook, so that they articulate in ever public space they're in your interests, not people who elevate themselves to be much better than you. Wena uzibone uyigusha yabo. It should not be like that, because in our view, fundamentally, what South Africa should understand, our understanding of politics in the ATM, we are servants of the people. We are in these spaces to serve you. We take the mandate from the people. So I could go to a meeting, community meeting, and say maybe speak for like 5 minutes, but the rest of the time I'm listening to the issues of the people, so that I get to better understand what are the issues. When I go to Parliament, I then find a way to udibanisa all of those issues and articulate. But for me, fundamentally, we as the ATM see ourselves as Abantu that are in politics for Abantu, not the other way around.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on Mzwanele Manyi. So he was an ANC gent. I think he was a spokesperson for the president at some point. Then ex-president Jacob Zuma stepped down. And once he stepped down, he left the ANC. He went to become a spokesperson for the Jacob Zuma Foundation. And then he went to join ATM. And at the time, the story was the ATM is a breakaway from the ANC. Mzwanele Manyi have built a political party. I think maybe for clarity, if you can explain to someone who's never heard, what was Mzwanele Manyi's role in ATM? Did he help found it? Did he help with funding? Was he a leader there? Or did he just happen to be a member that happened to be popular?
Yeah. ATM was registered in 2018. If you can go to even to the IEC in terms of the registration documents, who submitted documents, and the certificate is out in my name. Check the people that have been going around the different churches advocating for ATM. It was predominantly me. So Mr. Manyi joined the ATM January 2019. At that time, we've already launched our manifesto, meaning our product offering or service offering to the citizens is already done, is complete. However, because of your popularity, and that popularity again goes back to the personality politics, because a lot of people had to say, who is this Vuyo? We'd never heard of him before.
Of course, and he's young.
And he's young. It definitely can't be him. And Mr. Mzwanele Manyi, this is his credentials. Definitely it's him. But now that he's gone to another party, I think people should get to interrogate maybe what they are fed by the mainstream media, because it was a narrative that was driven by the mainstream media in order to create a certain perception about the party. I think we could do better as a country if we've got a media. As why not Penuel is the leader there. Regardless whether there's a person that is coming from wherever that is more popular than him. But when you've got a media that is playing to the narrative, but it's difficult for them also not to play to the narrative because nabo, they are funded. They've got certain interest. And if bayazi ukuba certain parties are actually against, or maybe the growth of these parties will not bode well for the interests of their funders or whoever that is controlling those media houses, then akuzulunga. That is why media is a tool that is used in our country to actually make blacks or party or people to actually hate abanye abantu because of the narrative. You know, in 2019, I read a very, very funny article from the Daily Maverick.
Yeah.
Vuyo Zungula is a former DA leader. And if you, who's this lady? Feril Hafaji.
Yes.
Apparently is a seasoned journalist.
Yeah, Farrell Hafaji. She's been an editor at big newspapers, yeah.
Yeah, but she said, I'm a former DA leader, whereas I've never been a member of any political party.
Yeah.
So, but why was that happening? Because there's a certain perception that needed to be created. Similarly, with this notion of were created or formed by disgruntled people from the ANC.
Yeah.
There was actually a commission of inquiry that was done by the former speaker, Dr. Frinjinwala, in the ANC to ascertain if any member of the ANC was involved in the formation of opposition parties, including ATM.
Yeah.
And that report said the ATM, like when it comes to the ATM, no one from the ANC in terms of leadership was involved in the formation of ATM.
Yeah.
But we'll never find the mainstream media discussing that report or making it public because it does not serve their interest. So yeah, it is what it is, I guess.
Do you have any personal opinions on Mzwanele joining the EFF?
No personal opinions, because you know when a person joins a party, ATM, it is because they believe but they can make a contribution.
Okay.
So when they want to make another or they believe but they can make a different contribution or equally make a contribution somewhere else, the best we can do is to allow them to be, because we're not a cult. It's only when one person leaves a cult that we attack them. But in an organization, you wish people well because people must have the freedom to decide what they want to do with their lives.
Did he have any leadership position at ATM?
He was an NEC member.
National Executive Committee?
Yeah.
Okay. Herman Mashaba of Action SA and Gayton McKenzie of the Patriotic Alliance have spoken very passionately about bringing God and Jesus back into schools. They believe part of the deterioration in society is because we don't have values and ethics. And according to them, they believe the values and the ethics that we should follow are the Christian values and ethics. What's ATM's stance on religion in schools and out and beyond religion beliefs? I'm not going to discuss the sensitive ones because unfortunately these platforms have their own agendas. So I'm not going to ask you a personal question on LGBTQI+. But I'd like to know ATM's stance on religion in schools and belief systems in schools, which then probably include African,
in our view,
traditional beliefs.
We need to have a system or a program that actually builds the character of people or kids or children in schools. And previously, that was actually done by having Bible studies. But even though now it had certain elements that would need to be improved. So, but the problem is that when they remove the biblical studies in our schools, they remove the prayers, they did not replace it with anything that would help shape the character, mold the character of young people in our schooling system. So we agree 100% that there needs to be, because number one, majority of people in our country are Christians. And there's no way in which you would want not to recognize that by majority, and therefore there needs to be programs as Ikoyo outside of the churches, in schools, in hospitals, in prisons that actually shape or mold that character. However, we are of the view as the ATM Mukuba, there are certain values that are, I would say, one would say maybe they are Christian if they are going to confine them to Christianity. But there's certain value system that actually cut across the board from abantu that would not necessarily be of the Christian faith. Because if we focus on those values that we agree with as a country, you're not going to have a case whereby abanye abantu would feel we are forced to be Christians. But if it's a value system, for example, if there's a program that teaches abantu to be in peace or to have peace or to peacefully resolve issues, peace and Christianity, it is one of the things that form the basis of Christianity. But when you approach it from a value system that has got a value system that would add value to the country, you won't find the non-Christians actually fighting against it. Similarly, when it comes to love, once you've got a society that loves each other, or people are basically filled with love, you are going to see less crime, because there's no way in which you could hurt each other at the same time. Nibe nitandana. So my or our view is that there are values which, yes, do form part of a Christianity. So we need to take those values, but at the same time educate the nation. These are values that would bring the nation together and mold the character that we want a typical South African to be. We've got a problem whereby we lack identity. You go to another some countries, this is a character that defines, for example, a Chinese. This is a character that defines a Japanese. But come to South Africa, there's no sense of identity, because we...
Rainbow Nation. Our beauty is in our diversity. Is what's always Rainbow Nation.
No, but this Rainbow Nation...
Our beauty is in our diversity is what's always sold. It's open-ended. We've got now 12, thanks to sign language. We've got 12 official languages, diverse cultures. We don't have, to what you're saying, one identity where you're like, you are a South African, I can see.
Yeah. And these are, this is what makes you South African. There's a, someone said, I'm not sure how accurate it is, Okoba, if you want to take up a German citizenship, there are some tests or programs that you need to go through, so that you're not only German by having a passport or a citizenship, but also in terms of being German at heart, or being German in terms of your character.
Yeah.
So, meaning if a person, revokes citizenship here in South Africa, goes to Germany, there's a value system, there's a character that he needs to align with that is particular to Germany. Whereas in our country, we do not have such. So, hence, I think in our view, we need to have conversations to say, what do we, because, I think again, 1994, the people that were coming from exile, but I don't think they had a future to say, or a plan to say, this is what we want South Africa to be 30 years from now. Number one, when it comes to the economy, etc., but most importantly, in terms of the character of a country, so that sibene programs that will take us there. So I would say, maybe to answer your question, let's define or have an understanding about where do we want to go in terms of the character of a South African, and then craft programs to say, these are the programs that will make or mold this type of a South African that we want. And not maybe just miraculously say, we're going to pray in schools and hopefully all things will fall into place, because sometimes, kuyathandazwa ezindaweni. I go to, there's even, there's a church, go to Nhobela church.
I don't know it now.
Yeah, there's a church whereby, I think it's in a tavern, people drink,
so I've seen that somewhere.
Yeah, so you could say one,
church.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
So one could argue, but there's God, there's prayer in a tavern, and people are drinking, but under the word of God. What is the positive impact to society? But if there's a program, if there's a vision or an identity, then the programs that we have now must take us towards achieving that vision.
I watched you get kicked out at Sona. I don't want to speak about it. I was actually very upset. And I do feel it was firstly ANC people being unnecessary. But what pissed me off more was the hypocrisy in how the Speaker of the House, the EFF, was being way more disruptive. Well, not even you weren't being disruptive.
Yeah.
The EFF was being disruptive, and at no point were they getting anywhere close to the same type of treatment. That really upset me, but I'm glad you spoke about it afterwards. Again, those clips don't trend.
Yeah.
I think it was very malicious. I want to speak about Ipalapala because you and the ATM have been quite vocal and aggressive in Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency in Palapala, to a point where some of the other parties, in my opinion, pretended like they were trying to get him to step down. But I see now it's fizzled. But you've kind of kept firm. To a person who has never heard of it, what is the Palapala case, and what was ATM's involvement, or what has been ATM's involvement with that case, and what is the status currently?
Yeah, no, with Palapala, what came out to the public domain, that there was foreign currency found in the president farms, which was not declared. And number two, the president was doing business or actively running a business whilst being a member of the executive, whereas the law prohibits him from doing so. So where we came in as the ATM is to say, if you are a public figure, you're a public official, your first foremost responsibility is to abide by the Constitution, because you are the first citizen. Therefore, if you are going to violate sections of the Constitution for your own personal benefit, you should not be occupying public office. So that is where we're coming in. And our argument is that if a president is able to do this, then the ministers, the premiers, the MECs, and even the mayors, they are going to use whatever political power they have to actually avoid being held accountable. So accountability, in our view, is one of our values, to say, if you have public representatives that are accountable, then they are going to be able to exercise their leadership in a responsible manner, because by us, they are going to be made to account. Mr. Ramaphosa is never accounted for all of those crimes. We pushed in Parliament, and there was an independent panel which found he may have violated some sections of the Constitution. And the wording of may have violated, because their mandate was not to test if there is wrongdoing. Their mandate was to test if, based on the information that is before then, is a possibility of wrongdoing, so that to allow space for a Parliament committee to actually go through whatever that it might have transpired in order to take a final decision. So in December last year, there was a vote.
December 2022.
2022, to whether to adopt a report that is saying a president has got a case to answer and may have committed wrongdoing. And that vote, it was not to impeach the president or to make him to resign. It was to create a committee that would interrogate or scrutinize the actions of the president in relation to his actions at Palapal. Now, when the ANC decided to vote against it, remember they were voting saying it is subject for legal scrutiny because he had taken it on judicial review. But he dribbled them, because after the vote was done, obviously the court case became on his side, because there's no way he'll want to go to court and actually interrogate the report, a report whereby now there could be court orders or court opinions that is actually saying there may have been wrongdoing. So what we wanted as the ATM, let Parliament have a committee that will scrutinize the actions of the president. And that is what Section 42(3) of the Constitution states the National Assembly must oversee and scrutinize. And as we sit here now, the National Assembly has not scrutinized the actions. Now, we also wrote to the Public Protector. There's a provisional report that absolves him of any wrongdoing. It pins the blame on the generals and all other people besides him. Whereas, the Constitution is very clear about you can't run a business. Now, the president is a sole member of a close corporation, which is Ndabanyoni Trust. And how a close corporation operates, the member, especially him being a sole member, is directly involved in the day-to-day affairs of the business. By the nature of sole ownership and that it's a CC. Yes, and if you're to look at him saying to one of the workers, move the money here and place it there, it's not safe in the safe, put it under the couch. There's a buyer that is coming in, take these particular animals to sell them. It clearly shows that he is involved in the day-to-day operations. However, the acting public protector states, nope, he's not wrong. He has not broken any law. Whereas Section 96 2B of the Constitution is very, very clear. You cannot, have any paid work. So in our view, some of the institutions, and it's an argument I also made, if you look at the Hawks, the NPA, Public Protector, the IPID, or Reserve Bank, also SARS, all of these institutions whose heads are dependent on Mr. Ramaphosa for them to actually get promotions or, grow in their careers in the public space, have all came to defend him or have all came to absolve him of any responsibility. It's only an independent panel which was headed by a retired Chief Justice that stated Ukoba there's a case to answer. Now it shows Ukoba one of the biggest problems we have again, institutions in our country are not doing their work looking at what the law is saying. Abantu want to position themselves because if you occupy political power as Mr. Ramaphosa, as the head of the ANC, the very same ANC that could vote for you to be the next public protector, you are most likely, if you are not principled, if you do not care about the state of our democracy and our country, you are going to be selfish and want to put your own interests first by having a report that will absolve this one that has political power that could be used to advance you as a person. But in our view, we need more public officials that will say, this is what the law says. If I get to be fired, so be it. If I'm not going to get a promotion, so be it. But I'm not going to allow myself to subjugate and relegate our law because I want political favors. Because, for example, the issue of the Reserve Bank, very clear as well. The law states within a particular time period, if you receive foreign currency, declare it.
Yes.
Number two, if you can't even trade in foreign currency because it is not allowed. It's not
it's not legal tender within this country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with Mr. Ramaphosa, that one is not undeniable. Even himself, he actually agrees, even in his papers and responses to that independent panel. But what is the Reserve Bank doing? Nothing. Only because all of these individuals, they are appointees by the political system. Whereas this independent panel could be trusted or could be understood to go back. It came with a more credible report. Whereas these ones, for example, it's been more than a year after Mr. Arthur Fraser went to the police station. Nothing from the NPA or Hawks. They're even scared to say we're investigating the president. So that is where we are. However, we're pushing. We've gone to court now. There will be a court case sometime in July. Supreme Court of Appeal because
July
2023 because we went to court to say the court, Western Cape High Court, must declare the sitting of 12 December 2022 to be invalid and unlawful because number one, the method of voting which was done on the day, which is open voting, was not a method taking into account the circumstances that would have yielded the best mechanism to ensure accountability. Number two, the Constitution states that Parliament must scrutinize the actions of the President and the Executive. Now, if you are going to have a report, also, it's not a report that was done. Chief Justice Ngobo did not just wake up and draft a report. He was mandated by Parliament. Here are the facts, or here is what is before us as Parliament. Look in terms of the law, whether there may have been wrongdoing. When Chief Justice Ngobo comes back and says, indeed, there may have been wrongdoing, the logical step, the constitutional step that Parliament should have taken, what would have been to say, let us have a committee that will further interrogate and scrutinize these actions in order to make a determination. So those are the two main reasons in which we are advancing in the courts to say the actions or the resolution that was taken by Parliament on the day was unlawful because Parliament must always act in line with the Constitution. The fact that the ANC has got majority, I know a lot of people keep on making that argument, but the ANC has got majority, they could vote otherwise. They must vote in line with what the Constitution wants. They can't take a resolution because by majority, but they end up violating the Constitution because Parliament is subject as well to the constitution. If it was a parliament democracy system, would having a different conversation. But in a constitutional democratic system, parliament must operate in line with what the constitution states.
Realistically speaking and personally, do you think anything will happen regarding Phala Phala?
Only, okay, I would say yes and no. Something will happen as we are pushing as opposition parties, because some of these institutions, including the courts, will rule in our favor. In fact, will rule not even in our favor, but will rule in accordance to what the truth is saying. However, the trend in our country is that if you occupy office, meaning you are the president of the ruling party, in the time you are in office, you get to be protected from everything. It's only when you are out of office that you are held accountable. It has happened to President Beki, President Zuma, and
you believe they've been held accountable since they've left?
As in, for example, Mr. Zuma, when he was not in, when he was currently the president of the country and the ANC, there was never a state capture commission. There was never the court cases. But it's only after that he did not have political power that there have been mechanisms or processes to hold him accountable.
Did he not set up the state capture commission?
Under pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not by his doing. It was, again, I think it was a resolution of the ANC at the time. And if I'm not mistaken, he lost the presidency in 2017. The commission was set up in 2018. And at the time, he was no longer president.
He hasn't been found guilty of anything.
Yeah.
Except contempt of court, which, in my opinion, was rubbish.
Yeah.
So do you really think they get held accountable even after they leave?
Yeah. My point was, there are processes or mechanisms to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
So holding a person accountable does not necessarily mean they must be found guilty. So
but have they been held accountable is my question.
There is a process, because a state capture commission is a process to hold him accountable.
Was he held accountable? Did they reach the conclusion of whether he did wrongdoing or not? Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. But holding a person accountable is not necessarily having an outcome a person is guilty.
Or not.
Must
there not be an outcome is my question.
Though there is an outcome about...
What's the outcome of a state capture commission?
The outcome, it's one of them is some of the members, for example, of parliament, have been referred to parliament to say these members have violated these sections of the Executive Members Ethics Act, therefore parliament must act.
Yeah.
So that is about one of the outcomes. When it comes to Mr. Zuma, I think some of his issues have been referred to further investigation. So the point I'm making is that if a person is occupies political office, he's going to be protected by not in principle again, but is protected by those around him, because again, the view of the ANC is that only us as the ANC can hold our person accountable.
Yeah.
And when they hold each other accountable, it's not about interest or justice. It's about these ones positioning themselves so that they could be appointed ministers or they could have access to tenders. However, when Mr. Zuma no longer became president, it's only then that we started seeing when he stopped being president of ANC, it's only then that you saw a state capture commission, which Kwayena he did not agree with when it was proposed even by the former public protector. But the mechanism of holding him accountable only happened after. So our view is that the same could happen with Mr. Ramaphosa, whereby these guys will protect him. But come 2024, when the ANC will not have majority, they will not have the majority in parliament to protect him.
I don't believe in our courts. I don't believe in our legal system, personally. Cyril Ramaphosa is maybe the loudest president to have captured so many different organs of the state. And sadly for him, he's unlucky because it's loud, because Jacob Zuma was accused so loudly of capturing, and there have been investigations and the media has tried, and all the things that Zuma was accused of, we get to see with Cyril Ramaphosa straightforward, where all of us can see and can hear about wrongdoings. And as you're saying, when the law is presented, when the constitution is presented, all of a sudden the answers are different from the people that are meant to hold him to account. When the same questions were asked of Zuma, when the media accused him, these people struggle to be clear. Whereas here, it's clear for everyone. We don't even need the South African Reserve Bank to answer. We know. We can read the same laws.
Yeah.
We don't need SARS. We don't need it. We can see the same laws. We're reading the same constitution. With Zuma, they try to spin it. And I'm not defending him. He is part of the ANC that I believe has destroyed this country. And I believe he made a lot of mistakes, whether intentional or otherwise, whether he was trying to do something good or not. But there were a lot of mistakes made, a lot of things violated, in my opinion. Nothing proven, as I said. I just unfortunately don't trust. And I do think a lot of our organs are captured and we're not going to see help. And it makes me sad when people like yourself, I've had a Zimbabwean national here, Rutendo Matinyarare, also speak about institutions. It makes me sad that you guys believe in these institutions, that you keep fundraising, taking people to court, trying to do the right thing when I fundamentally believe that it's just a waste of time and energy, realistically.
Is it not a case, Oba, for example, you have a case where you, for example, the issue of the public protector, Thuli Madonsela advocate Mkhwebane.
Yeah.
Now you get to see the attitude when it comes to how this one was supported in terms of remedial action against that president.
Of course.
This one is vilified for doing exactly the same thing, which is doing what that Chapter 9 institution is set up to do. Now, when we are taking the work to these institutions and they get to expose themselves by having judgments, remember, I think it was the Pretoria, not Gauteng High Court in Pretoria.
Yeah.
I think it was Judge Mlambo, who conflicted himself. It's not even different judges, him. When it comes to the remedial action of Thuli Madonsela, he had a certain view. But when it was Advocate Mkhwebane, he had got a different view.
Yes.
So do you not think maybe, Kuba, when such cases, such issues are brought to these institutions, then when they are exposing themselves, it helps to make our message loud to say there's something wrong in our country, because here is the evidence of how these institutions are basically failing and how these institutions are not living up to what is required of them. Whereas if we're keeping quiet, you may have the understanding of these institutions and how wrong they are. But how are you going to convince omnye umntu without that that evidence that shows? Yeah. So part of our view is that when you give these institutions work and you take issues to them, you are actually exposing them.
100%.
And that actually helps us to educate and inform the other people who may have thought, no, we are anti-so-and-so when we are saying these things.
I fully agree with you. I just think our opinions of what happens thereafter is different.
Yeah.
I think your hope is that exposing the institutions will allow them to be corrected. Whereas for me, all I see is the public losing faith in the institutions and leadership. I mean, you speak about the National Assembly that was meant to take certain action and they didn't. But then tomorrow we still want people to go and vote.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are we voting if you can confirm as a member of parliament that your colleagues there don't follow the work they're meant to be doing? So what are we voting for?
It is a certain grouping of that National Assembly that voted in a certain way, that voted against an investigation. And it's not the first time or the last time. I think there was a proposal to have an investigation to ESCOM. They voted against an investigation.
Of course.
Now, so it helps us, because when you're showing people, Kuba, this organization is actually the enemy of the people. We're able to say, here's a resolution that seeks to investigate a particular matter. These people said no investigation. Therefore, when they have to vote next year, they need to vote wisely, because when they vote for this organization, they know that they are going to vote for an organization that does not even want people to be investigated. Whereas if kuhleli wenje and there's no action, you are going to have loyal people that are saying, Kukoba, this organization never does anything wrong. But when we push them and their wrongness is actually exposed, it assists us in terms of educating the people to say they must make informed choices when it comes to voting next year.
Thank you. I just want to ask these questions because these are always important. You say that every South African must vote for ATM, which means they must vote for you. I think you've clearly articulated your mandate and who you represent, which I think is pretty dope. if you can please in very short answers, ATM's solution for load shedding, unemployment, the land, your thoughts on open borders and immigration, and education or the schooling system. I'm happy to repeat them.
Yeah.
You can maybe take one at a time. So load shedding, maybe unemployment as a start.
Yeah. Load shedding, number one, you need to deal with the evergreen contracts that are there, that are milking the entity. And number two, you need to have a heavy investment in terms of servicing the power stations. You need to have power stations that are working, not have a unit, a power station whereby there's 8 units, but only 2 are working. We need to have power stations whereby 8 out of 8 units are working, because that is how you are going to be able to generate power and basically distribute the power to the people. Yeah. On the issue of unemployment.
Sorry, I just want to confirm. So for load shedding, if ATM were to run the country tomorrow, you'll review the evergreen contracts, number one.
Yeah.
And then number two, you'll invest very much in maintenance.
Yeah, maintenance.
Thank you. Unemployment.
Unemployment, you need to, number one, diversify the sources of employment in our country and not rely only on formal employment. Number two, by saying that, is that you can't be wanting people to go through the traditional route, or they must go to school, have certain qualifications, and then they must be formally employed in a workspace. But you need to create mechanism whereby people could be self-employed and utilize some sectors of our economy, which do help a lot when it comes to making or creating a living for the people. For example, the informal sector, where people can run their own businesses, either hardware stores, spazas, restaurants, clubs, etc. So that is diversifying the means of employment, not have a system of not have a policy to deal with unemployment that is focusing on only in one side. Again, you need to have government spending that is shifted towards SMMEs. Currently, government spending of over R1 trillion budget goes, 80% of it goes to big businesses, and small businesses, they scramble for less than 20%. So if you are going to shift the spending towards SMMEs, SMMEs are most likely to grow. They are most likely, when they are growing, they are most likely to open new business, new branches, and create jobs in the processes. Yeah. Whereas big businesses, whatever amount they have, their profits, they take them, they invest them in another market. So that is why you find our economy is not growing, because the dominance of big companies is making these big companies actually drain our economy by investing kwezinye indawo.
Sorry, you're arguing that the reason we have high unemployment is because government is not spending enough money on SMMEs. Is that what you're arguing?
Yeah, part of the problem. It's not, we're not saying it is the problem, but we're saying this government spending does contribute to the problem of unemployment. And if you were to have a government spending that is more on SMMEs, then you have number one, various players or diverse players in the economy, instead of having the same old big companies that are dominating each and every contract that you have. Because these small players, number one, money will circulate amongst different hands. Number two, these players, when they have these contracts, they are going to be able to want to grow, because a small company wants to grow. I'll make an example about, I think, Isipatu. We saw in 2020 and 2021, they were opening a lot of shops across the country. Yeah. Whereas if you were to compare that with Adidas or Nike, they were not doing the same, because they, as a big company, they've reached the ceiling in terms of our market. Therefore, their interest is not to open more shops because they've reached the ceiling. Whereas the small company, which was Upatu at the time, wanted to grow. Hence, they needed to open shops. And in line with opening shops, they need to create jobs in the process. So buying or government spending that is more on small businesses will ultimately lead to job creation, because of the nature of SMMEs of wanting to grow in the process.
Don't you think that if government diverts money from big to small businesses, that big businesses will fire people? Thereby, you create a new problem. So you create jobs this side, but then you destroy jobs on the other.
The amount of jobs that are created by the growth of SMMEs would easily be able to absorb the people that, because it's not everyone that will be fired. in terms of the big businesses. And these small companies, whenever they need to grow, obviously they will need experience that some of these people have. So people will be absorbed in the process.
And more will be created.
And more will be created in the process, because SMMEs, I think it's Germany, whereby the economy is largely operated or largely dependent on the cooperatives and SMMEs, because of the nature of SMMEs and cooperatives in terms of job creation versus big businesses, whereby most of their profits, big businesses, they want to invest in other countries. Number two, big business pays very, very high salaries to the executives.
Yes.
Whereas when it comes to SMMEs, they do not have that amount of capital or finances to actually pay their workers or senior managers very, very high salaries.
Your thoughts on which one should I start with? No, let's start with education, since we're speaking about jobs.
Yeah, education, we also believe as an ATM, but it needs to be skills-driven education, whereby you have got an education system that is producing skills or producing learners that leave the education system from a basic metric level with skills they can be able to use in order to make a living, rather than people that have to go to beg other people for jobs. There's skills that young people need to have, particularly skills that are relevant to the needs of the economy. Therefore, I think what government ought to do is to look at what are the needs of the economy in terms of the skills, and how can they impart these skills via the education system to our learners, so that when a learner leaves matric, even if they do not want to continue to varsity, but they've got something they can use, instead of them being condemned either to depend on grants or to beg another person for a job.
Would you change the curriculum and maybe squash certain subjects now and replace them with skills subjects?
Yeah. Maybe not squash. Remember, you've got a system whereby at a particular grade, people or learners are having that opportunity to choose. However,
end of grade 9?
Yeah, I think it's end of grade 9.
Okay.
However, again, I believe what the government ought to do as well is not to have courses, let's say at a higher level, at a tertiary level, courses that they know these courses do not necessarily lead to jobs for the people. Therefore, why should you allow a person to go spend 3 years in a TVET college or in a university, and at the same time, as a government, out of the certain portion of unemployed graduates, the highest percentage of those graduates are coming from having these qualifications. Therefore, what that effectively means, these qualifications are not leading to people receiving employment. Therefore, government should intervene. So the answer is not necessarily squash in terms of the subjects, but create more choices and educate the people about the choices. But at a tertiary level, phase out the qualifications that do not lead to job creation.
Are you saying the focus should be grade 10, 11, and 12 for the skills?
No. I'm saying, the choices you take most at a grade 9 level. But when it comes to the education system, the problem, say, corner at a grade 9 level, if our early at early child development, whereby a person that is doing grade 1, 2, and 3, they are taught the necessary skills and capabilities of reading and etc. So early child development is integral. However, when you go to grade 9, whereby a person has got the opportunity of choosing whatever courses or modules they want to do for the rest of the
basic education,
they need to have options that will actually empower them to be able to make a living on their own, instead of them being dependent on asking people for jobs.
That's why I'm asking. The focus is on grade 10, 11, and 12 in the imparting of skills. In terms of grade 1 to grade 9, it's just maybe an improvement of what's currently there, because you said not necessarily to squash. So maybe improve on that, fix ECD so that kids can read for learning, but focus more on options grade 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah.
Okay. Open borders and immigration.
We've got an immigration problem in our country. Perhaps the reason why the government does not view this as a problem, because the more you've got poor people in our country, it benefits the government, because with the grant system and the building, in fact, the social assistance that the government gives to poor people, then those people are most likely to be loyal to the ruling party. It's so disheartening to go to a rural town. In fact, most of our rural town, you find that almost 100% of the economic activity there, if it is not a big company, let's say KFC or KFC okanye mhlambi it is Vuyo or all of the other economic activities, it is basically non-South African citizens. It's not sustainable. So we as the ATM were advocating that we are a law-abiding organization, and there are laws that regulate the movement of people from one place to another. And any discussion about African unity must be based on a principle to say, let's be equal in terms of our approach to unite, in the sense that there's no way we could say we want to have African unity. Whereas you as Penuel, if you want to go to any other African country, you need to abide by the laws of those countries. But when the same argument is advanced here in South Africa to say, if you are coming from another African country, or in fact coming from any other country for that matter, abide by the laws, then you are going to be labeled as xenophobic, or maybe go to you are anti-so-and-so, perhaps Afrophobic, And, you know, there's a guy, I asked him, very, very staunch on the issue of open border. I asked him, name one country besides South Africa that is pro-open borders. And are you saying open borders from an African perspective, whereby you are going to push South Africa to go to the African Union, and African Union takes a principled decision to say we're going to dismantle borders in the entire 54 African states, or you just want open borders in South Africa? If only in South Africa, then what is your intention? Because your intention cannot be genuine. Because if you had genuine intentions, you'd understand, Ukoba, if we are one, treat Abantu the same way. So we believe, Ukoba, the defense needs to come to the party and protect our borders. Home Affairs needs to come to the party and make sure, Ukoba, if a person lands on a flight in South Africa, there must be a system to track and trace those people. Ukoba, are they here legally? Are they here abiding by our laws? And maybe also, the respective departments, they need to deal with the companies that actually employ Abantu that are not legal in the country. Because it is these companies, because if a person jumps the border, works, for example, at Take a Lot or Mr. Delivery, we can deal with that one person. But if you don't deal with the system, which is the companies that continue, because the reason why they want him, it is not because he's the best, it is because they can exploit him. So that is why we are advocating about there needs to be systematic solution to the immigration crisis by dealing with the infrastructure, by dealing with the system of home affairs, and being very, very harsh on the companies that violate our labor and immigration laws.
And then the last one is the land, the land question. The land issue. Black people say that they want the land. We want the land.
Yeah. I would say maybe the point of departure, because the constitution and the constitution takes time, to be changed. So we cannot be saying to people, wait up until we as members of parliament resolve what is there in the constitution. But we need to advocate to say there are people with land. Go to, for example, my village. There's pieces of land there whereby people can make use of the land. So we would advocate in Ukoba, let government assist in terms of making sure that the land that, number one, is in the hands of the people and is in their hands as the government, people are able to use it productively, so that by the time we deal with the constitutional issues or constitutional limitations, we already have a success factor whereby land is being used productively for the benefit of the people, instead of wanting to think, Ugoba, the time we change the constitution, that is then our problems will actually go away, So we believe, Ugoba, equip people, give them the necessary resources, support them, and give them access to market so that a person does not go abe ngumfama, does a lot of good work when it comes to producing things, but go to these big retailers, your Woolworths, your ShopRites, your Spars, that are dominated by abantu abathile, which will want to ignore the produce that are coming from these emerging farmers that we have in our country, particularly black. So it needs to be, we need to have a conversation, or the government needs to have a program that is more on, let's capacitate, give infrastructure, support, and make sure that whoever that is working the land and is producing whatever product, they have access to the market. That is the only way in which the land in our hands will be productive.
I've looked at some of the data that's been brought up by the land audit, and close to 15% of the land is in tribal hands.
Yeah.
Close to 15% of the land is owned by the state. It's about 30%. And one of the questions I have asked when I get called a sellout and a defender of white people on social media is, with the 30% that is arguably under black control and black ownership, what have you guys done with it? Because it becomes so much easier to say, look, we've maximized what we have.
Yeah.
By the time you actually even maximize it, you probably won't even need to argue with the land. You'll have so much money, influence. You'll lease the rest, or you'll buy it. Or people that own other pieces of land will beg you to come and help. So I fully agree with you on that part. I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to add in closing.
Yeah, this has been a long conversation.
It's been long,
yeah.
You're tired?
No, I'll never be tired, but yeah, it's been. I think we've covered a lot for people to understand who we are. And maybe as time, I know, you spoke earlier on about you do not want this platform to be a campaigning space.
Yeah.
But in my view, if you are going to bring a person that, for example, is in the civil society sector, he's going to express himself based on the issues that he advocates for in that particular context. Therefore, if you are going to bring me, more often than not, the conversations will be political in nature, because that's a space I'm in. Now, if we open spaces, especially towards the political players, especially now, number one, our country is in a mess. Therefore, when we have conversations, then we're actually making people to understand, number one, they need to vote. This thing of people not wanting to vote is actually counter, it's counter their progress, because if people do not vote, it means they do not take a stand and say, we want to change the situation. Secondly, they need to make informed choices. And how are they going to make informed choices if there are no platforms? Unfortunately for us as the ATM, we're not funded by the Oppenheimers. So we don't have the budgets of these guys whereby they buy their airtime in these mainstream media. So ours, as these parties...
Hey, they must come buy airtime here, Baba.
Yeah, no, there's another guy who bought, he sent someone 12 million to write a book, so maybe you can come here.
Know exactly who you're talking about. We can mention it because it's in the public domain. Herman Mashaba was accused of giving Prince Mashele 12.5 million to write an unauthorized biography. It's a big mess.
I wonder, where's Prince Mashele now?
I also
and
don't
maybe
know.
It raises questions.
But then there's Herman Mashaba. Bab Mashaba say we need that 12.5 meter, Baba. That's just so pusher propaganda, unauthorized sit down with Benzo. No, but you guys in the political space, maybe not ATM. You guys are still relatively young, and we appreciate the work that you guys are doing, especially yourself. I don't know if you're the youngest, arguably, leader of a political party in parliament.
Yeah.
That is pretty amazing, considering that young people keep complaining about not having young representatives in parliament. But for other political parties, because as you rightly say, there are budgets, and if they're willing to pay mainstream media, we are the ATMs of alternative media. We're still small, so we need that funding, not to push propaganda, but just to maybe say thank you, to help pay for some of the guys that are here, to rent equipment and those kind of things, so that it's mutually beneficial. And unlike mainstream media, we'll be honest. We'll say, guys, ATM sponsored the water today, or they gave us 2,000 rand just for lunch, because alternative media is meant to be more transparent, more honest. Hopefully in time, especially as I earn a license, I can ask more aggressive questions without people being feeling offended. Because you're very right that when people ask questions or complain, Take it in a positive light, because it means the person is pained and they believe you can do better.
Yeah.
And when you get offended and you attack them back, you're giving them an excuse to leave. Instead of listening, what is your issue that I can maybe try and help you with, so that you can win this person. And if you win them, they become your ambassador.
Yeah.
Everyone else will be like, I once complained here. This guy listened. He solved those things. I think this is the guy.
Yeah.
And it means all of us need to be politically active and get involved. My last point is the part about getting people to vote is very difficult for me. I hope, I'm going to say it here, I really hope I will get money. Money.
Okay.
A lot of money. I don't know from where, but hopefully the IEC. I know there's a group, an NPO called Vote for Change.
Yeah.
And I know there are other stakeholders who are very interested in getting people who have never voted to register.
Yeah.
And then to go vote. I think, I apologize if the numbers are wrong. I think we had 42 million eligible voters last time, which is people over 18. 42 million. Of the 42 million, 26 million were registered. So already we've lost people. 26 million were registered and only 17 million voted.
Yeah.
17 million versus 42 million means a lot of people are not saying anything.
Yeah.
But the difficulty is some of them are saying, I'm saying something. By not voting, I'm saying something. Because if I knew there was an incentive to vote and to say something, I would say it. I'm saying I don't believe in this system.
Yeah.
What I think this country has to do, which is a conversation we probably need to have.
Yeah.
I think we need to make it compulsory to vote. And if you do not vote, there need to be consequences. Whether you are spoiling your ballot, which is a form of expression, voting for whatever party. If you are receiving a grant in this country, if you are benefiting in tax in some way, if you want to do business with the state, it must be on record that you are registered and you voted. Otherwise, you should not get to enjoy any benefits because it becomes something so fundamentally important in saying, do you deserve to be here? Because if you don't want to vote, come spoil your ballot. Come let us know that I think the system is rubbish.
Yeah.
I'm going to spoil my ballot. But you showed up and you said something. So I really hope somehow, I hope I can get money, not just me, people that are passionate about political education, explaining to people why they must vote and what it means. Having an opportunity for various political parties, especially the smaller ones that maybe can't afford big budgets, to say, what do you stand for? Why should people vote for us? What problems can we solve? What problems have we solved already? So that we can get more people to be active. And South Africa is a politically charged country, but our people are not as politically active as they should be. And it's very sad. We'll tweet, we'll scream on social media, but then when it's time to vote, it's like, hey, Baba, I'm going to a dinner. I can't be standing in a queue. And that's very problematic. And we need to speak about technology because we're in 2023 and standing in a long queue to hold a pen, to scratch across when we have technology and blockchain and fingerprint access and facial recognition. For me, it tells me that the incumbents that are running this country, the IEC and other places, they are happy with the status quo because they probably fear making the space innovative, and people like us need to try and push for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Vuyo lwethu, Zungula. Butwami, thank you so much. I hope when we sit down next time, we'll maybe even speak about the Bantu stance. Mthatha in the Transkei was arguably a beacon of hope at some point. When people like myself criticize black leadership, people are like, look at what the Transkei was doing. Look at what Bophuthatswana was doing. We need to speak about those, highlight those in alternative media so that black kids know, guys, at some point we were doing these things. How do we pick up the baton and keep it going?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much, brother.
Sharp.
That might be our longest conversation ever. And it's not my fault. I keep quiet a lot.
There was 4 hours.
Really? Longer than this? We've been at it for 2 hours and 15. Or if not, 20. 2 hours 20.
Yeah.
That's us. Vuyo, sorry, bro.